Listen, I'll hop around on it just to get a feel for how, where the energy is with the audience. I wanted to start with our government. And this is probably the lecture that's going to get me in trouble, okay? I've been being watched since 1996. My phones have been tapped. Nobody's been bothering me too much, just monitoring. That's because I've been taking the spiritual end of things. And they figure, oh, it's one of those new ages, nobody really listens to them, so they're not dangerous. They don't have that much information. They already know I have information. But interestingly, I haven't been speaking about the information the government doesn't want people to know about. This is going to be the first time I reveal some of this stuff. I haven't revealed it in New York yet, but that's due in December, because I have a big workshop planned there for December. We're going into a new millennium here, and it's about time we had a clue as to what's going on. Because we have been living under a lie. Not only since the 1930s, way back from the beginning of the seeding of our race here. For 200,000 years, certain things, certain factors were control factors in our evolution that were not intended to be a natural part of our evolution. We have been purposely made to be focused in a three-dimensional reality system, unaware of other dimensional systems. This has been done for repression of our DNA. We have DNA potentials that our scientists don't even understand yet. But there are certain beings that have visited here for millions of years that are very well aware of our DNA capacity. And that's why they've tried to repress it and suppress it. Because we have the ability to evolve beyond what they themselves consider themselves godlike beings. Well, we have the ability to evolve into such things. We have something in our DNA still. It was a gift that was given to us millions of years ago when we were first created as a species. It's called the silicate matrix. It's a 12-strand DNA code. It's in the morphogenetic template, the electromagnetic light-sound template that our DNA and our bodies are built on. It has been unplugged and not operational for over 200,000 years. We look at our history, and what we've been taught in school has so little to do with the reality of what history truly is. We have the Darwinian concept, and there's the concepts of, we were fish and we developed flippers and then we came out of the water. And all of these really interesting concepts because we have certain things in common with certain animal species. There are reasons for that because we were crossed with them at certain times and they were crossed with us, but that didn't mean we started there. We didn't. Our race was created 560 million years ago in literally a different dimensional field than what we're in right now, a higher dimensional field. We were an immortal race. Our bodies didn't decay and die like they do now. The silicate matrix gene code is a dormant potential within every person's body. Some people have more of it than others, and they're the ones that ETs want. When we have intruder ETs coming in here to bother people right now, they go for a couple of different things. One are called stellar substrand matrices in DNA. This is not in the books yet. This is new material. It's only been recently introduced in New York City. The stellar substrand matrices are extraterrestrial coding that appear in certain human gene codes. It allows them certain potentials to be taken through interdimensional portals without exploding, for instance. Because if you take certain coding, genetic coding, through a stargate, it will go into spontaneous combustion because it cannot expand on the morphogenetic level. Other gene codes are able to activate dormant coding and expand to hold the frequencies of the stargates. So when you're an invading ET race trying to covertly take over a planet, you want to create hybrids and you want them to have the highest coding possible. So they've been trying to trace family lines, trace them to find the ones that have the highest contents of the silicate matrix within the gene codes. Not just for hybridization, but because right now, because of the time period, we're back to that, stellar activation cycle, the people that have silicate matrix, more of it in the gene code, will begin to have spontaneous DNA activation because of the new frequencies that are going to be coming through the solar light spectrum. If that DNA activates, they become multidimensional people. They become able to see fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional frequency bands, where our little manipulators like to play games. As long as we only see 3 dimensions. They can do anything they want from the fourth or anything higher. If our silicate matrix begins to activate in our gene code, which it will, as these vortices set and sealed on the planet progressively open between now and 2012, we're going to be a real problem for any force that wants to control this place, because we're going to get wise really fast. They want to try to stop the activation of the silicate matrix. We're in the time period, it's so much like science fiction, it's hard to even speak about it because we've been so conditioned to science fiction that we can't deal with science fact, most of us. We can't deal with, on a real rational level, there's this big denial thing that happens, even with the most wanting to believe of us. If you will hit a level where you go, I can't deal with this. I have to go back to my job. I have to go see what's on TV tonight. I just have to ground myself and become just normal, just part of the program, like everybody else. Because when you start to see beyond the veils of illusion that we've been living here, you start to realize the manipulation that's taking place here. Part of the manipulation is ET manipulation, always has been. We don't know about them. Why? Because they didn't want us to, that's why. They didn't want us to know where they were or how to access them or to find out that we were being manipulated, because then they could manipulate us without any problem. But what we have to deal with in the next 10-year period, primarily, is not just ETs. It's our own governments. Our government, the United States government, became aware of the ET issue in the 1930s, not the 40s. They already had contact in the 30s. It was before Roswell, before any of that. There were treaties made between certain groups within the government. They wanted the ET technology. They were in the middle of wartime. They wanted as much advantage as they could. So treaties were made, and technology was exchanged, and we conveniently won the war. It wasn't by our own hand. There were technologies that allowed us to have the biggest and baddest weapons on the planet at the time. Unfortunately, it wasn't like you read in the history books. It wasn't solely the genius of our human minds creating wonderful war machines. We had a little help figuring that out. They came from the Zeta Reticuli. They're from the Orion star system primarily. That's where they originated, but they've also spread out into other systems, and they're interdimensional beings. They came here because they have an interest in what happens on planet Earth. They came here because they know about time cycles, and they know about stargates, and they know that ours was going to open, and they knew that would fire our DNA. That was going to cause a problem for certain control factors they have in two places. One is in a time space that's a little bit ahead of ours in time, where they are in control of human populations. And two is in something called parallel Earth. I don't deal too much with parallel Earth in the books yet, because we have enough to deal with our own, but they're intimately connected. Basically, parallel Earth runs a bit ahead of us in time, and we are very, very connected with everything there. What manifests there will eventually manifest itself here, unless there's something done to change what's called a time vector. So we're going into a situation where we're dealing with parallel Earth, we're dealing with stellar activation cycles, we're dealing with ETs that most people don't know or acknowledge exist. We're dealing with so many things crashing in on us all at once, and so little time to learn what it means, where the pieces fit, and what to do, that it can be very intimidating. But it doesn't have to be. That's why I was given the information that I was given. If we can get out to as many people as possible knowledge of quantic morphogenetic science, knowledge that you have a silicate matrix and you can do things consciously to activate it, which means you can begin to bring in higher levels of your own consciousness, which will set up protective bioenergetic energy fields, electromagnetism in your fields, that will block some of their electromagnetic pulse technologies. There are things we can do about what's happening. First, I'll tell you a little bit about what exactly is happening. Well, we have government suppression of high-tech data. Our government likes to tell us, wow, we learned to clone a sheep. I hate to tell you, they learned to clone more than sheep. And they've been doing it for about 15 years. They've had a lot of messes, too, in the process. Cloning is just a little thing they've been keeping away from us. That are involved with each, because there are natural rhythms when portals open and close, when they dilate and contract. We're coming out of time now when, hurrah for us, there's a chance for us to really wake up, if we could get it before they try to talk us right out of our own awakening here. we can start to see what's been going on around us, and we can start to take charge. Somebody has to, or we're going to be in trouble. Right now, with the suppression of the technologies and the little doings with our government, with the Zetas primarily, they've been dealing with the Zeta Greys, there's an agenda behind this. And our government thinks it's just controlling masses of people for basically real estate purposes. They don't realize they've been duped. The reason the Zetas were here to begin with was not because they're a poor little race that lost its home and needs to fix its bodies. So can we please have some of your gene codes so we can create healthy bodies for ourselves? This is the line of nonsense that our government bought when it sold us out. The Zetas knew all along. Yes, it wanted to make hybrids for infiltration purposes here. They knew that they wanted the territory. They were attempting to take over from the beginning. But our governments and the people were so full of themselves that they'd actually try to betray a mass of people. They're so full of their own egos and their own greed that they would do something like that. We're very blind. They figured, they're just little gray dummies, and get their technology from them and take them for a ride. Well, our government's going to be taken for a ride, and they know it now. What's happened in the last couple of years is even the people out of the MJ-12 groups and the people out of the World Management Team are trying to find a way to run for cover because they lost control of the Zeta treaties. They lost control of what's happening here. The intruders will do what they want when they want, and they don't care if the government likes it or not anymore. Part of the reason things have become very hairy, and it's been recent, is because for a while it wasn't certain whether the stargates would open. So it was kind of like, well, everybody's getting in position, but we won't go for it unless they really open, unless they're going to open. Well, in 1998, with the opening of the Ark of the Covenant, which is a time portal passage, that ensured that we were going into the stellar activation cycle, and yes, those stargates would open. See, once you start the stellar activation cycle, which has already been started, you can't stop it. It will commence, regardless, and it will either go smoothly or badly, depending on the energy balances involved. Once it was known that the stargates were going to open, then all sorts of beings from various harmonic universes decided to get in on the Earth game. There's a lot at stake here, because we have a precious jewel that we don't even know we have. It's called the Halls of Amente. They're stargates, but they're not just any stargates. They're stargates that link on a vertical rather than a horizontal plane through various different star systems, all the way up into the highest pre-matter dimensional fields. They're the ticket out of space-time. The intruder races, which their manifestation here has been very small comparatively. There's been major intergalactic problems with some of these races. And some of them are, that we usually refer to them as the draconian matrix, which is a whole bunch of different race strains that come out of one consciousness matrix. They have been wreaking havoc on galaxies within 3 harmonics for a very, very long time before we were created. They have always wanted control over this space-time system. If they can get control over the main vertical portal system, they can control any incoming and outgoing consciousness. They can basically create a little world unto themselves, a universe that's not connected anymore to the rest of the universal and cosmic scheme. In their own lack of understanding of what it means to have divine connection to all that is, in their own lack of spiritual understanding of what that connection means, they will make decisions like this that cause harm to many different life forms. So we have a little pot of gold sitting in the core of our planet that our whole history has evolved around. Nobody told us about it. The Secrets of Amente, which is the name of book 2 in the Voyager series, begins to unravel the forbidden secrets of our evolutionary destiny. And I assure you, what is in that book is the truth. And I'll tell you why. Because I remember. It's not just because I was a contactee. It's not just because somebody just came down and picked me up in a spaceship and showed me some movies and told me this is how it was. Because they can do that and they can show you anything. I remember. When I came in this time, into the baby body this time, I was fully conscious of fetal integration. I remember going from a fourth dimensional, non-manifest state of consciousness into fetal integration. I remember the process. I could describe it in detail to you. I remember where I was before that. And I remember many, many things that once you activate your DNA to the higher levels, you'll remember too. See, it's not just my memory. It's not that I'm somebody special or have a higher gene code and that I'm somebody elite compared to everybody else. I'm just an example. And the memory that I have is just an example of what's living inside each one of you. With the activation of the silicate matrix, you will find your stellar heritage, you will find your incarnational relationships, you will find your immortal self, who you were before you came here, why you came here in the first place. You'll find the parts of yourself where you made those decisions, because they exist. There are many wonderful things you can find. And that's what's wonderful about the stellar activation cycle that's coming. Though there's some scary stuff about it. It's really time for celebration. It's been over 200,000 years we've been trapped in these gene codes. We've been trapped in three-dimensional consciousness, almost struggling to get out of our bodies, to the point where death is actually a relief, because you get to cross over and at least get off the tight clothing. You may have to come back, but at least you're free for a little while and you can think again. Because anybody that's done astral projection, or that's had a near-death experience, or that can get out there, out of the gene code a little bit, your consciousness goes, wow, hyper-aware. You find levels of awareness that make you look very asleep here. And when you get really good at it, it's very hard to convince yourself to come back into the body because you realize what it does to you. We have a chance now to use the skills of our consciousness to expand the genetic potential of the body by calling into activation the junk DNA, which are the broken pieces of the silicate matrix. Science has discovered the junk DNA. They're the ones that call it junk. Just tell them that ain't no junk. It's important stuff. We can do this. The programs that we're putting together, I just founded a temple. It's called the Azurite Temple of the Melchizedek Cloister. That will deal with the spiritual teachings and will also deal with direct transmission of certain morphogenetic codes that literally go from bioenergetic field of someone who has them into the bioenergetic field of someone who doesn't, and it gives them the coding where they can start stimulating into activation the silicate matrix. There is a roadmap to higher dimensional identity integration. It's been hidden here for centuries. Some of it was in pieces of the ancient mystical schools. Pharaoh Akhenaten used it in his ascension schools. Being called Jeshua 12, who got rolled into the character we call Jesus, he used it 2,000 years ago to ascend people. And ascension means raising the vibration of your body pattern into the next harmonic, where you disappear from here and end up there. And you do end up in a physical body in the next harmonic up. It's about half as dense as this one. Progressively, we evolve by activating the silicate matrix. We evolve from gross matter to semi-etheric matter to etheric matter to pre-matter liquid light, and then into waveform. You do end up in a physical body in the next harmonic up. It's about half as dense as this one. Progressively, we evolve by activating the silicate matrix. We evolve from gross matter to semi-etheric matter to etheric matter to pre-matter liquid light, and then into waveform. This is the progression of going back into what we originally came out of, which was pure consciousness. This is what we always were. It's what we are now. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience, not the other way around. We need to relearn this. And I'm very, very grateful that I've been given the information I was given. And I was given it because I worked my way up for many, many different space-time placements. I have other simultaneous incarnations in what would be past incarnations compared to this one that studied and devoted their whole life to following a path of understanding these things. And then I went into teaching these things. And then I got to experience what it meant in 39 AD. I was a woman named Miriam, and I was half-sister of Jeshua 12, and we were Essenes, and we were teaching the Ascension program that is now being brought out through the Guardian material. And it worked. I actually did the full bodily transmutation. So when I talk about this stuff, I will talk with passion. I will talk, and I don't care who believes me or not. I'm sharing what I know is true because I experienced it. I walked it. I'm not some channel with somebody that's giving me some information and I regurgitate it. I have the contact experience. I have the history here. But I have my own memory. So when I talk to you, I'm trying to talk to your hearts as well. Somewhere in each one of you, there is the memory of many, many eons here. Because you know what's funny? When we go back to the last ascension cycle, they call it stellar activation cycle, 216 years ago, it was a mess then. The dark side got control then. But the people that were there are the people that are here now. We're back, all right? We just forgot who we were. And the ones that are remembered will begin to remember what went wrong at that time, so it doesn't happen ever again. We fell under the spell of the draconian matrix 200,000 years ago as a race. Our DNA to remember, will begin to remember what went wrong at that time, so it doesn't happen ever again. We fell under the spell of the draconian matrix 200,000 years ago as a race. Our DNA was altered, our consciousness was blocked, and we de-evolved and mutated into something that's nothing more than a little puppet on a string to those of higher dimensional reality fields. That is not our potential. That is not what we were created for. We were created as a guardian species. We were created as planetary guardians. We were created to stand as equals with the highest among the ET races. In fact, we were created as a vessel through which digressing ET races would merge their consciousness and take on a new form that would give them the codes that would allow them to go through full transmutation out of time and matter. We were created to be the genetic elite within most of the ancient stellar races. This is why some of those middle ground, middle harmonic universe stellar races do not want us to ever remember. And what's going to happen in the next 10 to 12 year period, depending on who wins this round, the majority of the people on this planet will either go upward into a very rapid acceleration of evolution, expansion of consciousness, activation of DNA, or they will go into mutation that after about 3 generations will completely dissolve the silicate matrix coding in the gene code. And they will become something different. They will become an animal form that no longer has the potential in its given form to integrate higher dimensional awareness, to progressively transmutate out of matter. That's why it's so important that we pay attention. That's why I go around having conversations like this with people, and half the time, a good portion of the room is saying, boy, she's nuts. And it's like, no, I'm not nuts. I'm informed. And excuse me if people have a problem with that. This group is wonderful. There's an awareness here already. I can feel it with you. Even if some of the things I talk about are a little out there, there's enough cognition here where you're very close to finding a space where that could be. You could probably deal with that being the way it just might be. Which means you're just getting ready to be open to learning what you can do to help yourselves, what you can do to help this planet. Okay? One of the things we need to be aware of is people say, there's no proof, there's no spaceships crashed on display out there, just put them in Times Square so we see them and know they're real. Of course they wouldn't do that, they don't want us to know they're real. If we want some physical verification of ET presence and potentially threatening things that are going to be done to us to try to get us under mind control here, we have the HARP Project. Okay. See, they failed to tell the public some of the other little goodies that it can do. The HARP Project can directly use ultra-low frequency and different high-frequency interdimensional spectra to directly affect your morphogenetic field. It can cause illness if directed the way, in a certain way. It can cause mental illness. It can cut off your ability to bring in higher frequency. It can bioneurologically block your ability to bring in your soul and oversoul and higher self-awareness. If they told the public, not that they were planning to use it for these things or anything, but just the fact that this technology could do something like that, do you think in America we would have tolerated that? Do we really trust anybody enough to build something like that if it could really do those things? Of course not. They had to lie to us just to get it so we didn't rebel when they were building the facilities. There's a lot of things we weren't told. They're beginning activation of the HARP Project. They're also beginning activation of something called EMP technologies, electromagnetic pulse technologies. The ETs have given them enough understanding of grid mechanics, ley lines, certain electromagnetic fields that run in geometrical form through the literal rock of the Earth grid that connect with the magnetic fields of the planet. They have been learning over the past probably 30 years how to manipulate these things. They can, if they want to, create earthquakes. They can, if they want to, control weather patterns. These aren't fiction things. Our government knows how to do this, and it's been doing it in little test areas to see what happens. There are certain viruses being created on purpose to get rid of certain elements of the population that certain government people think are not welcome here. They're tests. And the more these tests work, the more confidence they get. Because what they want to do is basically get everybody corralled under control. It's called a frequency fence. Then they can weed out the gene codes they want and the ones they don't. And they can make the ones they don't want disappear. Right now, the ones the government and the ETs don't want too many of around are the ones with high concentrations of the silicate matrix. Because if too many of them activate at the same time, it's going to change the whole frequency for the race morphogenetic field, the 100th monkey syndrome. It'll flip it over for the rest of the people. None of them will be able to be controlled if enough people activate the silicate matrix on the planet. So right now, and this is stuff that's not in the book either, this is kind of recent things that were told to me. The agenda on the intruder side is to instigate a form of ethnic cleansing by having us kill each other. You know all our scenarios about Armageddon and World War III and all that stuff that everybody's getting a little nervous about because it's, year 2000 is coming up. Is it going to happen? Is something weird going to happen? Well, no, not in the year 2000. When we cross over there, we're just going to wake up the next morning and probably have a hangover from one heck of a celebration the night before. But there is a plan to use electromagnetic pulse technologies, run them through the grid and through the known electrical circuitry, because there's something called a phantom pulse. There's a pulse that's sent through the Earth core that has the ability to pick up any other electrical signal and run with it as a trace, as a phantom pulse. And they carry programs. They're almost like floating digital programs. When those floating digital programs come through, I mean, we're getting beamed with electricity from everywhere we turn. You know, there's wires everywhere, there's lights everywhere. You know, your toaster becomes your enemy in this case. You know, unplug that thing. These electromagnetic pulse, phantom pulses, move into the human bioenergetic field. We need to realize that we are made of energy. We are electromagnetic phenomena ourselves. And we extend far beyond just the matter part of that. Our bioenergetic fields. We have a chakra system, we have an auric field, and we have something called a morphogenetic field, which is the core level. It's called the Cathara level. And we get into the teachings of that. These are the levels of energy upon which everything else is built. These are the levels of our being that get affected by ultra-low frequency pulsing, by phantom pulsing. And there are beings who know how to use this pulsing to get exactly the results they want.